Hey there, this is Perch. Heroes in Crisis number 9. So, this is going to be there will be a review of the issue, but also kind of the series in general, and trying to kind of figure out where all this story lands us. I read Heroes in Crisis. There's kind of two stories going on here. And I think it helps if you're a reader trying to kind of parse your way through it. It may help to read it this way. So, the first way you should read it is just open it up and then go through all the 9 panel talking head pages. And there's quite a few of them. I'm seeing here, 5, 6, about 6 of them, it looks like, if I'm counting here correctly. And it helps to just go through the comic, and you're not going to spoil anything by flipping pages. So just look at those and read those through first, kind of get them out of the way, put them to the side. We'll talk about those in a second. And then go through the actual comic. And the comic is really not a lot of time is going on here. It's really, we've caught up with Wally and Wally because he's done some time travel shenanigans, and he's about to kill himself. And suddenly, Booster and Blue Beetle, which should be a really joyful, happy reunion. I mean, a lot of people have talked about the grim nature of this series, but how do you have how do you have a comic where we're getting Booster and Beetle back together again for adventures, and it's not fun? How do you pull that one off? Anyway, you got the two of them. You have Batgirl and you have Harlequin here in her old costume for some reason, which is fine. And they kind of crash the scene, get met up with Poison Ivy, so we get a nice reunion. What's curious about this comic is it feels like, um, Tom King kind of recognized that the Harley and Poison Ivy relationship or friendship or whatever else was going to be critical here. That was the part that all the fans would miss. And for one, we're getting kind of a different Poison Ivy back. We're almost getting kind of Swamp Thing Poison Ivy, kind of very much from the green, regrown from the green. And so we're getting that relationship back. But I mean, are the fans of Poison Ivy really, are they liking this? Is this what they want? I don't know. But most of this is about Wally and Wally kind of learning forgiveness and talking about how you make a mistake and how do you make up for it and what's the morality around what he's done and how do you come back from these issues. Then you have kind of a semi confusing Booster Gold plan of kind of just looping time to put it up. We get Bros Before Heroes. Um, and Booster and Wally were not the biggest kind of team, but okay. And then, there's some quick kind of, there's a body placed, but not completely sure why there's a body placed. And then Superman and Flash show up in the Justice League and they arrest Wally West and throw him in jail, and the issue is over. Um, okay. And I think it's meant to end kind of hopeful. I mean, our very last page we get shows the friends, Booster and Beetle, together, kind of being themselves. We get Poison Ivy and Harlequin kind of taking a walk in the woods. We get what looks like Batgirl going in for therapy, I guess, is what's going on there. And then Wally in jail. But hey, despite the fact that all these horrible things happen to you, you're still running. I think this is meant to be optimism. It's meant to be they're very flawed heroes, and the quest for Wally's family is kind of over, but he's still running. I think this is meant to kind of be the pickup at the end. The problem is that when you take a journey with characters in this direction, you kind of open up a box, and then you can't just put them back into the box and call it a day. It just doesn't work that way. So it's like the laughter in the last panel of the last page of Booster and Beetle laughing. It's like, yeah, except unless you have a really terrible memory, you're remembering all these kind of heartbreaking things that Booster said earlier, and now he's still enjoying life. And I guess in real life there is that sense of, you go through life and you have good moments, you have bad moments, you have tragedies that kind of shape and define your life. and you have good things that shape and define your life. And maybe there's a philosophical question here for you and for all of us as people of, are you more shaped by your tragedies or by your successes, by your glories, by your accomplishments? What are you shaped by? And this series has taken the approach of, you're shaped by your tragedies, but you can overcome them. And really, and if you kind of read through it, it talks about the achievements being in spite of the tragedies. But it's and that's a tough, it's a tough message. And I think when you do that, it makes the ending kind of bittersweet. And maybe that's what, King was really kind of implying anyway throughout this series, is that, there's always this underlying darkness. Maybe this series just has the flaw of kind of running in parallel to this very dark time with Batman and Catwoman, and kind of loss and heartbreak and being broken. Just a lot of being broken. So this series again, I did the review of 8, kind of the penultimate issue, and I said, part of the way this feels, and it's the comment I get over and over, is, who wanted this? Like, nobody asked for this. I didn't want this. Is kind of in the reaction in the store, and I think this issue didn't do anything to really dispel that. It's, here's a dark and tragic look at the tragedies that these heroes endure, and maybe it helps make them more rounded. The challenge is when you get these scenes like, Wally comforting Wally, saying, "Kid, you're not alone," and Harley's hugging Ivy, and Booster and Beetle are together, and Batgirl's looking on. It doesn't it doesn't feel optimistic. Like, you even look at the page and you've got storm clouds rolling in, or kind of this dark dusk, and maybe some light. It's how do you view it? Do you view it as the light coming in or the darkness coming in? And no matter how hard you try, the words that are positive feel somewhat hollow, because of kind of where we came from all this. Well, so before we bounce into more thoughts on that, back to these 9 panel grids of the heroes talking. So I went back and forth, and there's a lot of kind of anger and outrage immediately over what Green Lantern, Hal Jordan said, and some of the others. And the way I choose to look at these is, it's a bit. It's like almost a comedy bit, and that's really reinforced when we get Red Tornado talking about building a family as a nod to King's Vision run. But it's very not tongue in cheek, but very, the jokes about Robins all kind of saying the exact same thing. Um, but it's a bit, and you have to almost ignore it. It's like this is almost comedy, how these characters are talking and everything else. It's meant to be comedy. That's really the only way you can read it and not lose your mind, because otherwise it's a systematic kind of plow through the DC universe, just kind of not broadening characters, but making them actually one dimensional. That's the problem. Is a lot of this stuff just winds up taking, the story, this whole Heroes in Crisis story is intended to make three-dimensional, kind of look at different sides of characters and show a part we don't normally see. And instead it's kind of pushing everyone into more of a one-dimensional state. People are just a bit, I fire and ice. As long as I have ice, as long as I have fire. Okay. I mean, it's very, I don't know. And the other problem is, what we learn as you go through character after character after character, it's like, well, they're all flawed. And yeah, that's kind of the point. The point is that these heroes have flaws, have problems, but there's no answers here. And in life, in human, we have to find the answers from within. We have to, go through these struggles ourselves. But when you have like Dr. Light saying everything that's happened, everything he did, and I still use this damn name. Okay, so is there an issue coming up where she changes her name, or are we just, every time we see her and she's called Dr. Light, is it like, all right, she has this secret shame, but moving on anyway? It cheapens the character rather than enriches the character. And then clearly the writer was trying to enrich these characters. The Tom King was not doing this with the intention of kind of, you know putting all of the DC universe on a one note, uh, he wasn't intending to dismantle the characters. I do not believe. Some people speculate, but I know. I think he's trying to add richness and trying to add depth to these characters. The problem is it doesn't play off well. When you have Adam Strange, I'm a man of two worlds, which means I belong everywhere, which means I don't belong anywhere. Several other characters echo the exact same thing in this issue, let alone the whole series. So it's like, okay, so they are all flawed and they're all kind of flawed in the same ways. And now what? I don't know. It's you get to the end of this and you kind of think, was the universe enriched with this series? Did it add anything to it? Well, it showed us that the heroes have deep and scarring flaws, that they struggle with pain, inner pain, and that they question a lot of themselves and their abilities. I kind of feel like most of the readers already assumed that they did feel like these characters just weren't bouncing around, saving the world and going and having a burger. That they felt like the characters have wrestled with these things. And in all the writers, including Tom King, they've inserted enough of these elements into the books that you do believe these characters have these flaws. I think Raven and Spoiler and some of these other characters, Jim Corrigan. As you look at this stuff, a Beast Boy talking about, I think about Tara all the time. Every morning I wake up and I hope she's there. After, isn't that the worst thing? I mean, we kind of know that from the series. So to see it laid out here in kind of a therapy session, it's weird. It just it doesn't add anything. It feels reductive, not additive. And that's kind of the challenge with this issue. Is you hope that these little events, these stories, bring something kind of new to the table. And in a lot of ways, it feels like Heroes in Crisis took away more than it added. It took away depth of character and kind of almost brought our characters down, not up. And so I mean, in terms of story crafting, people are again down on Tom King, but it's a crafted story. I think Clayman is doing amazing art here. I suspect, by the way, that Clayman, who's the artist on this, I would like to see him paired with a great inker. I think it would kind of like Batman Last Night and some of the others. I think we'd see a better production if he was paired with an inker. It's not that it's bad. It's really nice artwork in a lot of ways. Really nice artwork, and the coloring is really good too. I think that the page quality, Timu Moret, the colorist, I think there's a lot of really nice aspects to this issue, and it looks beautiful in a lot of cases with the way it's laid out. But I do think an inker would help. So it's a very nice looking issue. It doesn't have multiple artists on it, which is one of my pet peeves. I hate it when they do that within a comic, kind of for no good reason. Even if the artists are all good, I like seeing just one artist all the way through it. But again, it's a series that if you take it and you read it all the way through, you start to really question why are we doing this? And not only is it kind of ultimately a depressing story, but it's one that you feel like things have you've got less than rather than more. By the time you're all done reading it, it feels like it's reduced the universe, and not even counting kind of what happened with Wally and kind of where his character stood, Roy and some of the others that were kind of just killed in the background, which I still think is pretty cheap. But such a curious little story. Where they go from here, rumor is it that Wally will join the Suicide Squad and be kind of thrust into that mix, which will be fine, I guess. Get some redemption going there. Maybe move the pieces around the board a little bit. I guess I just don't understand why you have Wally, you bring him back into Rebirth, and you can't do like a year long. I mean, what about a Heroes in Crisis? What about a 9 issue, 12 issue series where Wally's on the quest to kind of regain his family that he lost somehow through Flashpoint, or kind of what about that? And you can have it be, you can even have it be filled with heartbreak and struggle as he's not able to obtain all of his family or some of it, or who knows? There's lots of ways you could still make it dark and depressing, but you could also make it just triumphant of him kind of building on Rebirth. I think this took a big element of what Rebirth was and kind of put it back into the box, and close the lid. So it's curious. It's just very curious, and I think in a lot of ways the legacy of this comic is will be mostly forgotten. Wally, if he joins the Suicide Squad, will have adventures there and get redeemed there, and they'll kind of reference what he did at Sanctuary, and then eventually he'll have some heroic moments, and some writer will use him somewhere else, and we'll quietly just forget this whole thing ever happened. I don't see Sanctuary being a key story point in comics, unless maybe they're written by Tom King, but I don't see other writers picking up on this and going anywhere with it. So in the end, it's an event series, very much like Identity Crisis. That I don't know where I don't know how you build on it from here, other than just quietly walk away from it, and that's it's kind of what the fans are doing. This issue had a lot of groans of people who read it, and I think, as I mentioned in some videos before, there's this tipping point where you hope in a story or in a writer's run or an arc that it's going to lift off the ground and take you somewhere, and it's not going to take you anywhere. That's kind of the conclusion, is that it didn't have a salvation moment. It just kind of had a quiet ending. And that comics don't always have to end with happiness and puppies and rainbows. They shouldn't. I mean, comics should make you think. And maybe for me, I think this comic didn't make me think much. It actually felt more hollow when you finished it than empowered. So I don't mean that to be a crushing review. Again, I try and always do these with the "Is it for you?" I'm not sure. I mean, if you're somebody who really wants to see kind of the inner struggle of characters, if you've been reading what feels like a lot of shallow stories of heroes just fighting villains and saving the day and everything else, and you want to take a look at the inside turmoil that heroes go through, then this probably is a good event series for you. This is something that you might take some real depth from. Again, art is gorgeous, coloring is gorgeous, story is fine. I mean, it's crafted, it's put together. He's trying to tell a story, and he's telling the story he wants to tell. So it's not like it's a botch on the storytelling. It's just for me anyway, it feels more like it took away rather than added. So that's my take on it. Leave some comments. Would love to hear what you thought, especially if you liked it. I think there are people who do like this story, and love to hear from you. I think if you liked it, I'm really glad you did. I don't. I'm not trying to drag everybody down into the depression well here, but leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, notify, follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch, and most importantly, thanks for listening.